Hello and welcome to another video from the English at Penrice YouTube channel. Today we are going to be looking at fiction reading skills, looking particularly at the skill of evaluation. If you're thinking about your exams, this will help you in particular for your English language paper 1, question 4. Right, today we're going to start by having a look at what evaluation as a skill actually means. So let's have a look at a definition, quite a broad definition of evaluate before we begin. So to evaluate means to think about something really carefully in order to make a judgment about it. So to have an opinion on it, to take a particular perspective, and to think really carefully about that judgment you're coming to. In order to evaluate really effectively, you're going to be using different pieces of evidence. Now, in our case, on the whole, that's going to be quotes that writers use and methods that they use. And it's really important that we know how to pick that evidence carefully to support our evaluation, to support those judgments we're making. Today we're going to be evaluating an extract from the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. We're going to make some judgments about it, and we're going to use evidence and analyse that evidence thoughtfully in order to support our evaluation. So the first thing I'd like to do before we read the extract is just give you a bit of information about it. So in the extract we're going to read the character Lucy has already been turned into a vampire. At this point in the novel, she's been prevented from returning to her grave. Van Helsing, one of the other characters, has put communion wafers around the grave, and it's stopping her from returning to her grave. Jonathan Harker, Abraham Van Helsing and Arthur Homewood, who is Lucy's husband, all lie in wait for her to return to the graveside. However, at the risk of Lucy tempting Arthur to her, also likely resulting in him becoming a vampire, Van Helsing quickly removes the communion wafers that block her entry, and she returns to the grave, so they're unable to do anything else that night. Okay, let's have a look at the extract then. It's split over 2 slides. Do pause the video at any point to reread anything that you haven't quite understood or you would like a second reading of. Right, so here's the extract, the first part of it. Let's read it through together. When Lucy, I call the thing that was before us Lucy, because it bore her shape, saw us, she drew back with an angry snarl, such as a cat gives when taken unawares. Then her eyes ranged over us. Lucy's eyes in form and colour, but Lucy's eyes unclean and full of hellfire, instead of the pure, gentle orbs we knew. At that moment, the remnant of my love passed into hate and loathing. Had she then to be killed, I could have done it with savage delight. As she looked, her eyes blazed with unholy light, and the face became wreathed with a voluptuous smile. Oh God, how it made me shudder to see it. With a careless motion, she flung to the ground, callous as a devil, the child that up to now she had clutched strenuously to her breast, growling over it as a dog growls over a bone. The child gave a sharp cry and lay there moaning. There was a cold-bloodedness in the act, which wrung a groan from Arthur. When she advanced to him with outstretched arms and a wanton smile, he fell back and hid his face in his hands. She still advanced, however, and with a languorous, voluptuous grace, said, "Come to me, Arthur. Leave these others and come to me. My arms are hungry for you. Come and we can rest together. Come, my husband, come." There was something diabolically sweet in her tones, something of the tinkling of glass when struck, which rang through the brains even of us who heard the words addressed to another. As for Arthur, he seemed under a spell. Moving his hands from his face, he opened wide his arms. She was leaping for them when Van Helsing sprang forward and held between them his little golden crucifix. She recoiled from it, and with a suddenly distorted face, full of rage, dashed past him as if to enter the tomb. When, within a foot or two of the door, however, she stopped, as if arrested by some irresistible force. Then she turned, and her face was shown in the clear burst of moonlight, and by the lamp, which had now no quiver from Van Helsing's nerves. Never did I see such baffled malice on a face, and never, I trust, shall such ever be seen again by mortal eyes. The beautiful colour became livid. The eyes seemed to throw out sparks of hellfire. The brows were wrinkled as though the folds of flesh were the coils of Medusa's snakes, and the lovely blood-stained mouth grew to an open square, as in the passion masks of Greeks and Japanese. If ever a face meant death, if looks could kill, we saw it at that moment. And so, for full half a minute, which seemed an eternity, she remained between the lifted crucifix and the sacred closing of her means of entry. Van Helsing broke the silence by asking Arthur, "Answer me, oh my friend, am I to proceed in my work?" "Do as you will, friend, do as you will. There can be no horror like this ever any more." And he groaned in spirit. Quincy and I simultaneously moved towards him and took his arms. We could hear the click of the closing lantern as Van Helsing held it down. Coming close to the tomb, he began to remove from the chinks some of the sacred emblem which he had placed there. We all looked on with horrified amazement as we saw, when he stood back, the woman, with a corporeal body as real at that moment as our own, pass through the interstice where scarce a knife blade could have gone. We all felt a glad sense of relief when we saw the professor calmly restoring the strings of putty to the edges of the door. When this was done, he lifted the child and said, "Come now, my friends, we can do no more till tomorrow." Okay, so that's our extract. Do pause the video at this point to read through it again by yourself, to get a really good understanding of what's going on, to look up any tricky vocabulary that you're not sure of, and to be in a really good position to move on to do some evaluation. Okay, now we've read the extract a few times and we've got a really good understanding of it, we're going to start the process of the skill of evaluation. So today we're going to look at evaluating the extract with this statement in mind. In this extract, Lucy appears utterly evil. Her husband, Arthur, is clearly in great danger. The first thing I want us to do is really explore that statement, those key focuses and the key words that we've got there and what they mean and any associations we can think of. So the first part of the statement we're going to evaluate today is Lucy appears utterly evil. Well, let's think of some synonyms of evil. So we've got terrible, wicked, sinful. When I think of evil as well, I think of figures like the devil, damned to hell and punishing people for all eternity. And then that second part of the extract, her husband Arthur clearly is in great danger. Well, when I think of danger, I think of potentially harm, even the risk of death maybe. Again, we've got some synonyms to maybe think over danger being synonymous with the words threat and peril. I'm also thinking about the fact that the statement says that her husband Arthur is in great danger, so we get a sense that he's very vulnerable and she's very dangerous and potentially very harmful. Let's pause the video again here and go back to the extract again. With this statement in mind, I'd like you to form your first response to it. Do you completely agree with both parts of the statement? Is she utterly evil as a character? Is Arthur in great danger? Is there anything in particular that stands out to support your interpretation, your first response to the statement? Do you think maybe there's anything that suggests that she isn't utterly evil, or he isn't in great danger all the time throughout the extract? And in the same way, is there anything in particular that stands out to support that interpretation, that response to the statement? Okay, pause the video now, go back to the extract, have a look through with this statement in mind, see what you think. Okay, if you haven't at this point already done so, it's a really good idea to write the statement out as you make your notes for today's lesson. And we're then going to move on to finding some evidence to support our response to the statement, to support our evaluation of it. So just remind yourself again, the statement is, in this extract, Lucy appears utterly evil. Her husband Arthur is clearly in great danger. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is to split that statement into the two parts that we can see there. So on the first column of the table that I'd like you to draw out, you're going to put that heading, Lucy appears utterly evil. And on the second column, her husband Arthur is clearly in great danger. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, in a moment, pause the video again and go back to the extract and find some quotes, find some evidence that supports or goes against those two parts of the statement. So in terms of finding evidence, this is what I've got so far. So for my first part of my statement, Lucy appears utterly evil, I've found that there are quite a few references to hell and the devil. So I'm going to put those together because that's quite a nice pattern that the author uses. So I'm going to take them as one piece of evidence, but three different quotations. So I've got Lucy's eyes were full of hellfire. She flung the child to the ground, callous as a devil. And the eyes seemed to throw out sparks of hellfire. So that's my first set of quotes, my first piece of evidence really, that pattern of repeated references to the devil and hell, that supports definitely the idea that she appears utterly evil. And the first quote that I found for the second part of the statement, that her husband is clearly in great danger, is this really ominous line, if ever a face meant death, if looks could kill, we saw it at that moment. And in that sentence, we've got really a clear indication that she is wanting to harm and kill her husband and potentially turn him into a vampire himself, and therefore he is in great danger and she poses great risk to him. Okay, as I've said, pause the video there. Try to find at least two other pieces of evidence for both columns, but leave some room between your quotes because we're going to do a little bit of analysis of them in this table as well. Pause the video now. Let's have a look at what you can come up with. Okay, hopefully you managed to add some more evidence to your table. This is the evidence that I chose. It doesn't matter if you haven't got exactly the same as me. These are just my examples. Of course, if you do want to borrow them to add to your table, you can do that, of course. Okay, so to add to my evidence for the first column, I found the quote, baffled malice, which baffled to mean confused and malice to mean hate-filled cruelty. And then I also found these references to animal imagery, an angry snarl such as a cat gives and growling over it as a dog growls. I found that pattern as well, so I put those two quotes together. And then finally, for that second column, I also found that word advanced, that verb repeated a few times as she moves towards her husband. I thought that supported the idea that he was in great danger. However, I also found two quotes that seem to maybe refute, so go against the idea that Arthur is in grave peril, great danger. So I found the image of her recoiling from the crucifix and dashing past it, and then everybody feeling a sense of relief at the end. So, you know, that sense of danger in both of those doesn't seem to be apparent so much. As I said, if you need to pause the video there to have a look at my evidence, maybe to add it to your table if you'd like it, please do so now. Right, so now we've got a really good understanding of the extract. We've formed our first impressions or our first response to the statement, and we found some evidence to support or go against the statement. We're now going to explore some of the methods that the writer uses in all of that evidence that we've collected. Now, by methods, I'm just going to remind you that we're talking about maybe language methods such as noun or verb or adjective choices. We can talk about figurative language like simile, metaphor, personification. We can talk about connotations of words as a method, or the tone of a particular phrase or sentence. We can talk about structural methods too, such as the opening or the ending. or a switch in focus, which might result in some contrast in mood or atmosphere maybe. So remind yourself of those methods before we begin to have a look at the methods that the writer uses in the evidence we've collected. So for my first piece of evidence, the references to devil and the hell, I've suggested that the writer is using that method of comparison to the devil and hell to emphasise how evil and sinful Lucy is. And obviously I'm linking that exploration to that statement, aren't I? And then also the simile, she flings the child to the ground callous as a devil, and that simile also compares her to that cruel figure of the devil, and that conveys her cruelty there. Okay, same as before then, pause the video here, look at the evidence you have, try to explore some of the methods, try to do a brief bit of analysis after every bit of evidence you've collected to really start exploring and supporting our evaluation of the statement. Hopefully you managed to add some methods and analysis to the evidence you gathered in your table. These are my points of analysis and my methods that I've added. You obviously might not have exactly the same as mine, you might have different evidence. But do take this time to pause the video again and have a look through my methods and analysis that I've added in a different colour. If you want to, obviously you can add this to your own table, of course, if you're missing anything or you want to change anything. Also, just take note as you pause the video and read of how many different methods I've tried to identify and to analyse as I've been exploring these bits of evidence. So I've got some language methods in there, such as word classes and their meanings. I've got reference to similes and imagery. I've also tried to have a look at tone, and I've got the ending as a method there towards the end of that second column. Okay, so as I've said, pause the video, have a look through that analysis and make sure that you've got something along the same lines for your own table. Finally then, we're going to look at writing up our evaluative response, given the evidence we've collected and the way that we've analysed the methods that we found in our evidence. So one more time, just reminding yourself of the statement that we're evaluating today. In this extract, Lucy appears utterly evil. Her husband Arthur is clearly in great danger. My question to you now, based on that statement, is to what extent do you agree? So I'd like you to come up with some judgments and your evaluation in terms of how much you agree with that statement. The way that I'd like to start an answer like this, an evaluative response, is to sum up what we did before we started collecting evidence, which was to come up with our overview response to the statement. And I'd like you to write that down in one sentence, just coming up with how you judge that statement initially and giving your reader an overview of how you feel about it. So my overview sentence is as follows. While Lucy does seem cruel and dangerous at times in this extract, and Arthur seems to be singled out to be harmed by her, there are moments when she appears to be more vulnerable and less malevolent, so less evil. Okay, so that's my overview sentence. I've evaluated that statement in one summary sentence to begin. I just want to make sure then that in the rest of my answer, I'm referring back to something in that opening, that introductory sentence all the time. Moving on to my first full paragraph of analysis then. So remember, I'm evaluating all the time. I'm evaluating the statement, I'm evaluating the extract, I'm evaluating those methods that the writer is using. So Stoker, so the author, conveys Lucy's evil actions and appearance through repeated comparisons to the devil and hell. She appears to be a wrathful, threatening figure who has been damned and now appears to show signs of the devil and even the underworld itself. Okay, so that's my opening point. I've linked it, I've evaluated the statement, I've made a really clear point in terms of a judgment that I'm making about Lucy appearing very, very evil, linking to that statement. Now I need to evaluate how the writer suggests that she's evil and wrathful and links her to the devil. So evaluating those methods here. The simile callous as a devil, used to describe how she throws the child to the floor, not only reveals how heartless she is, as the adjective callous suggests, but also implies she enjoys this cruelty, as the devil is thought to enjoy punishing the damned in hell. Okay, so that's my evaluation, not only of the statement now, but of the methods the writer's using to convey these ideas about Lucy being evil. I'm going to try to take it one step further. I'm trying to develop my analysis here. Furthermore, the repeated image of her eyes throwing out sparks of hellfire alludes to the evil anger she is displaying to those she despises, so the other characters. In addition to developing my analysis one step further again, this suggests that, like hell, she has the ability to inflict great pain and suffering and is therefore deeply evil. Okay, so just a reminder what I've tried to do here. Let's try to start with an overview sentence, setting out my overall judgment, my overall evaluation in response to the statement. Try to make a really clear point at the start of my first paragraph of analysis relating to that statement, in which I'm evaluating something clear that I've taken from the statement. Try to choose quotes. These quotes are all linked, as they were in the first part of my table earlier, to provide evidence for that point that I've made. And I've tried to bring in the evaluation of methods and analysis of those methods to evaluate my ideas and the statement really, really thoughtfully. Okay, pause the video here, go back over my answer, we'll just take those away, and have a go at completing the answer. So you should probably aim to write another 3 or 4 paragraphs if you can. You've got loads of evidence and analysis in your table now, so that should make that a very straightforward thing for you to do. Just make sure that you are trying to cover all of those criteria that I've set out in those orange boxes there. And there you have it, your evaluation response. Thanks very much for listening today. Do sign up to the English at Penrice YouTube channel for lots more videos to support your English literature and language revision.